What's up, boys? Today, I'm going to build the UFC 303 card. It's going to be pretty sweet. A couple of disclaimers. Number one, these are all in no particular order. And number two, these are the fights that I want to happen. Alright, most of them probably going to be wrong, but a boy can dream. Here we go. Already announced, we have Michelle Waterson-Gomez versus Jillian Robertson, two pioneers of women's MMA. And I'm more surprised this hasn't happened already. Alright, these two have been on the roster since like 2017. Pretty decent fight, pretty decent scrap. Both women are at least okay at finishing. And at least it's going to be more entertaining than Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chiasson. Alright, this fight got announced right before I started recording. Expect the clinch fest. Gonna be boring. It's kind of what these two girls are the best at. Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. Again, excellent matchmaking, just like the Waterson-Gomez versus Robertson fight. Two guys you'd think would have crossed paths by now. Next up, B. Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barrial. Matchup just outside the top 15. Both guys have lost to guys just within the rankings, Jack Hermanson and Chris Curtis, respectively. Obviously, the UFC wants to push Pyfer, and Marc-Andre Barrial is kind of there to be hit. Not a lot of head movement, not a lot of agility. They're obviously setting up a knockout for Joe. Round 1 KO, what I'm predicting there. Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree. This is way too early for Jamal to be coming back. You get knocked out by Pereira. I mean, it's not like it was just like a TKO where he wasn't defending himself. He was like, his eyes were rolled into the back of his head. You know, like he can't come back that quick. Like Justin Gaethje is taking 6 months off, after the Max knockout, and Jamal is taking off, 2.5? Right, not a good look, especially against a power puncher like Khalil Roundtree. I think he's going to do some nasty things to Jamal. In our UFC 303 main event, the final fight announced so far, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. Fight's probably going to be one-sided, and it could really go either way. Kind of all depends on the mindsets and the game plans involved. If Chandler goes in there and leaves himself open like Poirier, Gaethje, and Oliveira, kind of sets a bad precedent there. But if he leans on his wrestling and Conor's kind of flat-footed like the last two Poirier fights, he has a far better chance. Other fights I'd like to see, I figured these fights would work based on availability, injury status, ranking, and fun factor. Mike Malott versus Matthew Semmelsberger. Mike needs a rebound opponent, and Semmelsberger seems like a good matchup. Two guys that are at a point in their career where it's kind of do or die. If they ever want to be one of the elite. Good test for Mike to see if he's improved his cardio. Again, Matthew Semmelsberger, not the most technical guy in the world, but he has all the intangibles. He has the chin, he has the cardio, he has the mentality, right? So if Mike can beat him, he's kind of righting the wrongs from the Neil Magny loss. I think the UFC, they want a star in Canada, and they're going to try and boost Mike up here. Nate Landwehr versus Kyle Nelson, a fight that was set up on the Blanchfield-Fiorot card. Both fighters kind of called each other out a little bit, fought on the same card, similar amount of damage. And I mean, these guys, they throw down every time, so good to have them on the McGregor card. Probably a fight of the night, that's what I'm predicting anyways. Danny Barlow versus Court McGee. I'm sorry, but we're getting to a point where Court McGee, he's kind of running out of use for the UFC, so they're probably going to feed him to an up-and-comer. Danny Barlow seems like the type of guy to do it. Phenomenal sense of range, wicked power, especially in the straight punches. Kind of the future of welterweight, right? So makes sense again. Kind of a theme of this card is feeding the old to the young and figuring a lot of things out. Ricky Simón versus Pedro Munoz. Two bantamweight veterans, lots of parallels in their career. They both only lost to the upper echelon of the division, and they're both on 2-fight losing streaks right now. Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. An obligatory fat heavyweight fight. Not saying it wouldn't be fun, just not as fun and as technical as our next fight. Petr Yan versus Chito Vera. A fight that fans have been wanting to see for 3 years now. It always kind of just seemed like the timing was off by a month or so. They both fought on 299. Marlon took more damage, but he's borderline superhuman, and can recover from that in no time. First round's going to be boring. Jan is always quote-unquote downloading information, and Vera is a naturally slow starter, but it'll pick up towards round 3, so it's going to be an excellent scrap. Up next, Charles Oliveira versus Mateus Gamrot. A card this big needs a backup plan, and if anyone falls out of the main event, Gamrot should probably get the call. I'm kidding. They're going to do Oliveira versus McGregor. It's a fight they wanted to do for ages now. Right? Connor's wanted it since the third Poirier fight. He's wearing the Brazil mouth guard. He was going to call him out. He's going to be like, I want the Brazil. I beat RDA. I beat Aldo. That's not an Irish accent, but you get the point. Or McGregor falls out, breaks his titanium shin bone, or his ego. We have Oliveira versus Chandler too. You know, it was a back-and-forth title fight. Sign me up. And for the co-main event, Ian Gary versus Colby Covington. All right, this is Colby's best chance at regaining some sort of relevancy here. And Ian Gary's grappling is the only part of the game that we haven't seen tested yet in the UFC. We've seen takedown defense, but not against a volume guy like Covington. It's a fight that practically sells itself. You get to build kind of a Team Ireland versus Team America at the press conference. A win over Colby puts Ian Gary top 5 in the rankings, in a position to fight the winner of Leon and Bilal or Shavkat. And a win over Ian Gary allows Colby to coast for a year. You know, be inactive, hang out with hot broads, you know, people can't even call you out for being inactive because, like, you just fought, man. Like, I got to recover. I got to recuperate. Overall, I think the UFC can't just get away with putting McGregor on a card with trash fights, right? They need to pad it a bit. Building storylines is probably the way to get there. Old versus young, 2 fighters looking to move up the rankings, 2 fighters who want to scrap, right? Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Leave any changes you'd make to the card in the comments. Genuinely curious about what other matchups people kind of want to see here. Sub for more MMA content. Got some really good stuff coming down the pipeline in the next week or so here. Have a good time.